All right, welcome back to me. I'm back,
Okay.
guys. You guys were here last week, but I was not.
Yep.
So thanks for putting in the hard yards and running the show without me.
Good to have you here, man.
Yeah, I'm glad
We're
to be
so
back.
glad you're back.
Yeah. I'm feeling a lot better. Had a little bit of
Yeah.
illness going on.
Yeah.
What kind? Should we talk about it? It wasn't
I mean,
COVID.
it's
Let's
fine.
just say that.
No, it wasn't COVID.
You had the
I did.
shingles.
I had the shingles, and that was super
Ooh,
painful.
It sounded like you said
I,
shiggles.
shingles.
I had the shiggles.
The shingles.
Shiggles.
I was talking with my brother about how shingles sounds like one of those 1800s type of sicknesses like consumption and dysentery, like, oh, I came down with the shingles, so
Jed
Yeah.
got the
I was
shingles back in 23.
right. I was drinking some poop water and I got the shingles.
Time to dig a nude latrine.
That's right.
so yeah, I got shingles, which is the Pokemon evolved version of chickenpox. And that's the best way I can describe it. And it was super painful, guys. I'm not gonna
Do you
lie.
get the
I was
same
like,
little pocky pustules that you get in chicken pox that you can't scratch, or is it
not
different?
as much. It's a little bit
they're
different.
there.
Like it's more like a big rash that's on one side of the body, and then it like frays all the nerve endings where that rash was. So
Ugh.
like the recovery is super painful because all your nerves are learning how to feel all over again. And so
Oh,
like your
damn.
shirt just existing next to your skin like feels like sandpaper. So,
Oh.
you know, I'm not going to get into
Oh.
too many more gory details that I've already disclosed.
Well, people need to
but
know this is a public
Yeah.
health service podcast where we want people to maintain their health. And I was going to visit you, and then I realized I didn't want to catch shingles, so I didn't. That's how
So
I
you
help
can't catch shingles, believe it
You
or not.
can't catch it. It's just your body decides to freak out because you had chickenpox when you were 12.
That's exactly it. Yep,
Ugh.
you either had a low immune kind of system going on, and too much stress, like kind of a combo of the two, and so it
Yeah.
just reignites the dormant virus that is in your body from when you had chickenpox, which is why I said it's the Pokemon evolved version.
Whoa.
So yeah, once
So
you've
take
caught
away-
it once you've caught it like a Pokemon, then you can evolve it over time.
It's a big old Charizard coming out of your
That's
side.
right.
So,
Exactly.
well,
Oh,
we want you to get
yeah.
proper rest and manage your stress,
That's
Justin.
right.
We want you to
Exactly.
feel good. We want Justin to feel good about Justin, so Jay and I aren't left alone again.
That's all right. Well, you had some good companions talking about the Aliens RPG last week. I heard Lincoln was on for a little bit, but had to drop off due to connection issues. But
He was
John
eaten
was
by
there
a
too.
xenomorph. Quite frankly, he was gobbled
Oh,
together.
that makes sense.
He was game over, man. Game over. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So-
And then John was there to kind of help us out too, which he was a player in Jason's campaign. So a lot of fun. I played that Aliens RPG and thought it was a ton of fun. I thought that the scenario that was in the starter pack was really, really good. Jason did a really good job running it, and we all had a great time.
Yeah. Now that's
it.
not the starter pack scenario. That was an actual.
Oh, it wasn't?
Yep. Destroyer of Worlds is a separate
Oh.
cinematic. Yep.
Oh, for some
But
reason,
it's
I
one of
thought
the
it was
box sets. It's one of the cinematic box sets you can buy. So it's a complete kind of thing.
So I have to apologize to Jason a little bit. I was probably like the worst player, like for all of his sessions that he ran. The first time, I don't know what happened. The first time that we played, like I was hit with a sleeping spell or something like that, and I had the hardest time staying awake during our session. Like I could not stay awake. And then this last time I had shingles, and so like I was just like in absolute pain. But I had a good time. Hopefully everybody else did too. So
That's a
Yeah.
solid sell. I was so falling
okay.
asleep. I was so tired. It was awesome.
It's okay. It's okay.
I
Everything's
will
fine.
say though, I will say though, Jason, that even though I was struggling to stay awake the first time, and again, I had a really long day that day. It was a really long week, but I was struggling to stay awake. I still played my character in a way that pretty much everybody remembered.
Oh
the
yeah.
hammer.
Everybody
you know.
remembered the hammer.
Yeah, so I still left my mark on it, which was good.
Did you wear hammer
Yeah.
pants that say it was hammer time?
Well, I didn't know I was going to be a hammer until I got there. So, yeah. It a super fun scenario. Loved it. Loved it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good. It was a great scenario we talked about. Check out our last episode if you're interested.
Yeah, for sure. Episode 102.
Yeah, and to
Uh,
be we didn't really
go.
talk about the actual um, cinematic so much as we talked about the system, but it was good. It was good fun play.
Oh, nice. Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, well, this week we are going to talk about how to run a military campaign, right? A military style RPG campaign. I think that this fits in a lot of different things. Like you could do a military style Star Wars campaign. You can do a military style D&D campaign if you want to. But there's other systems like Zweihammer that we talked to that would fit well with this. Warhammer Fantasy roleplay would fit well. Even Shadow of the Demon Lord, right? Some like anything you can really kind of shoehorn this into anything. But we're going to talk about what makes a military campaign and how to successfully pull it off. So before we get into that, though, Dan, how was your Geek Week, sir?
Oh my gosh, it was so geeky. All right, I've made some real improvements to. I've upped my Legion miniaturing game. I've upped it my game. I finished my LAATLE patrol transport,
Ooh.
and I've named it Grease Lightning. I just have to do a little bit of touch-up paint. For those listening, for I think Star Wars Rebels, they came out with an attack ship for the period right before the Empire took over. So the clones were using it for half a minute, and then the Empire used it anyway. It's a lighter version of those kind of troop drop Vietnam era Huey kind of things that happen in Star Wars that were introduced in episode 2 and 3 of the films. Anyway, it's a lighter weight version. I learned a little bit about modeling. Let me talk about my modeling education real quick. So I haven't built a model vehicle. I don't know. I think I attempted, sadly enough, an AT-AT Walker when I was 8 years old, and my dad basically finished it for me. And then I never went back to modeling a vehicle at all. So this is the first vehicle I've modeled. So I've been modeling dudes, but not vehicles. This one has 2 dudes inside of it. They're impossible to see. One thing I learned is don't waste a lot of time on the dudes who are impossible to see. You have to look at it straight in there. And I really wanted to put a light kit in there, Justin. I wanted to put an LED light kit in here so bad, but I didn't do it. I wanted to. There's a little yellow button right here. I was going to put a little spotlight in there. But I was like, I'll never finish this model if I try to do a light kit. I'll make a mess. If I build a second one, I'm definitely doing a light kit. So number one, if there's crap that people will never see, do a version of it if they're looking in the window that they can really see. Worry about contrast colors, because it's going to be dark unless you pre-lit it. So you need like white buttons and not a subtle kind of amber Star Wars button that no one's going to see. And don't worry about the shoulders and the backs and what color the chairs are, because it don't matter. The other thing is you can tell from the people who are watching on TV, it's very shiny. This is my Home Depot side of me. I was in Home Depot and I saw they had mirror paint, but one step below mirror was a really shiny chrome. And I was like, oh, what if I do a really shiny chrome and then take a metallic army paint and go over it and have it like be a bright red kind of predatory looking thing. And what I learned is you got to take a test piece, and I did my primer. I hit it with the rattle can shiny spray paint. I did a little test piece, and I did the red treatment I thought I was going to do. And guess what? That paint did not want to adhere to this glossiness that's on this shiny thing. Yep. So I use that to my advantage, right? It's a make it work moment, right? So if there's a convex surface, the paint will move. You put the paint on your brush, and you swipe it down on a convex surface. If things are too shiny, let's say you primed it with a gloss, a semi-gloss, or even sometimes a satin will do this. You'll paint with your paintbrush, and the paint will go running away from where you just painted. And that's super annoying. That works on convex surfaces. On concave surfaces, it actually holds the paint. It holds the pigment in a little cup. The surface tension does a pretty good job. So I have all these little treatments that are little red little blockies in here. The teeny tiny ones, I just used it to my advantage. And then these panels, for those listening on the MP3, they have kind of like TIE Fighter-y panels on them. And those have these tiny little pyramids on there. And those did a good job of using the surface tension and the viscosity to trap the red metallic paint that I painted the panels. So it's turned out pretty cool. I have to do some touch-ups. But it's pretty much ready to play, but I need to base it right now. It's just plastic. It's just a plastic base.
How does it work mechanically in the game?
Well, you have a large base with 4 notches, north, south, east, and west. And it has a movement. It can transport an entire unit of troops inside. They don't get to hang out the side and shoot. That would be an open. This is technically a closed transport. So even though the sides of it are open for game purposes, it's treated as closed. It basically flies in and it hovers at a distance where you can't attack it with a melee weapon or a weapon at range 1 or a weapon at range 2. You have to attack it at range 3. So if you fly this over a Jedi who can only throw his lightsaber at range 2, you can rain down hoary hell on him, which is one of my things I'm going to do with this thing. So Anyway, it's fun. It's cool. I've been list building ever since I got it finished, and I'm kind of excited about that. So that was a lot of hours in the old Geek Week on the LAT, L-A-A-T-L-E Patrol transport for Star Wars Legion. For you guys paying attention, this is probably the geekiest geek thing I've ever done on Geek Week, but I'm excited about it. Oh, and its name is Grease Lightning. I also recommend if you make a vehicle, make sure it has a theme song. Give it a theme song. Sorry. All right. Anyway, second Geek Week is just TV stuff. I had the Geek Planets aligned. There was a new episode of Mandalorian and a new episode of Star Trek Picard within 48 hours of each other, and it was cool to be dipping my feet in both universes within that short period of time. Picard season 3 is pretty good so far. Picard season 2, but I'm in for the ride for season 3. So if you tapped out of season 2 and you have Paramount Plus and you want to go check out season 3, I like it so far. The first several episodes have been great, and they've already said this is the last series they're going to do with Picard, and so they're going to say goodbye in a grand way. And it's a huge love letter to the movies of the original movies, the Star Trek, really Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3, the titles and the music and everything, with other music cues from First Contact. But if you watch it, it feels like you're watching Star Trek 2 for a little bit. So go check it out if you want to scratch the Trek itch. It's good.
I'm a little worried I've got to get through season 2 of Picard.
I think it's you can kind of skip it. Yeah, I think it's skippable.
Okay.
It's skippable.
All right.
Just go straight into 3. Yeah.
There's so many Easter eggs that happen in Picard that it's been such a long time since I really was like immersed in the Star Trek universe that when all the Easter eggs were happening with like the Star Trek stuff in Picard, I was like, I think I remember that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, and I didn't really get into some of the Voyager stuff, and DS9, I watched maybe half of it, because I was younger at the time and busy. And so like, I never really went back and watched those, even though I know that they were really good. And I think DS9 was one that got better over time. So the first couple seasons were okay to me,
tough,
but like,
and then it got going.
Yeah. So,
certainly.
it's, again, some of those Easter eggs, I'm just like, oh gosh, like I don't know where I'm at with this, because there's like a big reveal moment. I don't know if that's really an Easter egg. It was a big reveal moment, and I'm like, I think I remember why this is supposed to be important, and so it kind of lost me a little bit.
Interesting.
There,
Yeah.
So,
well, if you like the idea of getting the Next Generation crew back together again, you can just tell from the advertisement that they're getting the band back together, and there's a lot of nostalgia in there. But it's a good story, and I'm on the hook. Amanda Plummer, if you remember, she was the murderer in So I Married an Axe Murder. She's also pretty psycho in everything she does.
Sweet
Rose, sweet
hard-hearted
Rose,
harbinger of haggis.
Harbinger. Yes, exactly. She's the main bad guy right now, and she's crazy, and she's chewing up the scenery like nothing else. So Go check it out just for her. So it's a
Nice.
good show. I'm gonna give it a thought. Oh, here's the other quick thing about Star Trek. It's in the original series and a lot in the Next Generation. They always had the plot of the admiral showing up that wasn't part of the crew that would mess everything up and want the crew to go do a thing that he wants to go do. And the crew's always like, "This is stupid. Why are we doing this?" That's essentially the plot of episode 1, season 3 of Picard, which is the Admiral shows up and he's our protagonist this time. We want the Admiral to succeed. And and everybody's like, "You've got to be kidding me." So it's such a cliche. They call it the Badmiral episodes in Star
that's
Trek
hilarious.
because it's a bad admiral.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of tickles me pink that now we get to see things from the Badmiral's.
There's a couple of those ones in Clone Wars animation where like the general would show up, the Jedi general, and you know the clones were like, "Dude, seriously, right now?" Or you know, like Ahsoka was like, "What's wrong with that Jedi?" You know. But anyway,
turn into the dark
good
side.
time.
That was a good one. He had 4 arms. That was a great one.
That's right. That's
Cool.
right.
All right, I'll pass it on to you guys. Thanks for letting me go long, but I had a lot to say this week.
Jason, how was your geek week?
It was good, man. I have been getting caught up on I don't know how to say. I'm going to butcher his name, right? Guillermo del Toro. Is that how you say his name?
Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro.
That's right.
His cabinet his Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix.
It's so good. It's so good.
So good. Yeah.
It's pretty dark though.
Well, yeah. So good. You know.
I know.
I'm a dark kind of guy, and I love Lovecraft, and this has very strong influences from Lovecraft. Some of them are based on Lovecraft stories. That even ones that aren't. There are a couple that aren't Lovecraftian at all. But they are really dark. And I'll tell you this, one thing I like about H.P. Lovecraft's books is that they carry a level of suspense, but they're not unpredictable. Meaning you can kind of see what the end is going to be when you're about halfway to 3/4 of the way through the story. Like, I know how this is going to end. And sure enough, it's not good, and it's the way it ends. So it's not really a surprise in the ending, but you still have the horror of making your way to that ending. And I think a lot of these episodes in the Cabinet of Curiosities are like that. You can tell this is not going to end well, and it's probably going to end like this. And most of the time it does end like that. But it's still a great ride to get to that ending.
It's like watching a slow-moving train wreck. Like you just can't take your eyes off of it.
Yeah.
And you know it's going to be horrible, but you're just like, I got to see it. Like I can't not look at it, right?
Yeah.
So
there's a lot. It deals a lot with madness on all levels: madness, insanity, chasing after. What happens if you chase after your dreams, but you allow your dreams to kind of consume you and cross over that kind of inhibition line that we have that kind of keeps us grounded in reality, or we have that inhibitions in us to keep us from doing things that are unheard of to be able to achieve our dreams. And these, I think, deal with a lot of people that are willing to cross that line to kind of achieve what they want, and then the repercussions that come from that. So that's when I've been really digging a lot of. In fact, I'm gonna let's see if I can share my screen here real quick. I'm going to try to share a tab.
So while you're sharing this, I watched the first episode with my wife, and she says, "You can finish the series by yourself."
Yeah, same. Oh, wait, she watched the first one.
Yeah, the very first episode.
No. Yeah, that was a good one though. I really liked that one. I had the guy from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Thou in it? Yeah. So that's some good names that are acting in there. My wife jumped in on the wax one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the whole time she's watching, she's like, "This is really weird." And then when it reaches kind of it crosses that line and goes into, okay, it's all downhill from here, right?
Yeah.
She was like, like the whole time we're watching it. And then to the point to where she was in the room reading the book once, and I just flipped the TV on and I put that on. She's like, "Are you gonna watch that show again?" It's like, "Yeah, okay, I can go out. I'll go out." I'll go out. I was like, we can watch something else, babe. But I put this
That's
on
so
just to
good.
kind of show, and I'm flipping on IMDb, so we're gonna get some ads in here. But there's the wax one, right?
Yeah.
This wax body walking through the back of your house, and bodies laying down on. So it's
Oh,
definitely got
Prince
a horror vibe. Only watch
oh
this
man.
if you enjoy horror. But I love it. Whoops. Just there's one more I wanted to show. So let me see
Well, and what's funny is that very first episode, like
that. Yeah.
it wasn't really like there wasn't really a lot of like jump scare type stuff. I mean, there were some
No,
tense parts, right? And it's just classic horror. It's just
it's classic
classic,
horror.
classic horror.
Yeah. It's such a good buildup in that first one because you're like, what
Yeah.
is he gonna find? What is he gonna find? Then he starts finding, you're like, ooh, that can't be good. But then
This
he
is
keeps
not good.
pulling it and pulling it, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
but then it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. But the guy just crosses the line. He doesn't care.
It's just
But
classic Cthulhu.
I
So
love
good there.
this picture because it captures kind of the feeling, right, of these guys walking down an area where you're like, you should absolutely not be there. Wherever they are, you should not be there.
Yeah, this
But
whole
they are.
environment's
Run
screaming
away!
no.
Yes, but they are, and they continue to walk.
Yeah.
But that was good. So that was my first Geek Week. I'm trying to push through that one. My
It's
wife's
really
actually
good.
out of town, so that's helping. But the other thing is the Games Workshop Gorger, right? So this
Oh.
is the original
big is that?
model. It's not like that big.
Okay.
Like maybe
Sorry.
maybe an inch
Couple
and a half.
inches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably 2.5 inches. But that's the model. I don't like this model at all. There's something about it that just kind of looks blocky and weird. So gorgers are. What's interesting is gorgers are ogres when they have babies. Ogres in Warhammer. When they have babies, if there's ever anything wrong with the baby, they are like, we don't want this. And it's not like like the wild where like the mother wolf will like sit on a cub, right, to kind of end it prematurely. What the ogres do is they take their young that have problems and they throw them in a cave and then they push a boulder on. So it's like they're giving them a chance to survive, just not in their world. So they throw them in this cave and they push the boulder, and it's just kind of whatever happens. So the gorgers are those babies that somehow manage to survive inside of this cave. Yeah. And so that's why they have this like pale skin. They're kind of like mutated and such. So what I did is also you can't buy this model anymore. You can still play it. There's points, but you can't buy this model. Or it's one of those that's like it's always out of stock and you can only get it online, right? So I took a crypt horror and I put an ogre head on it and I gave him a little gut. Can you see that? With the green stuff. I gave him a little belly.
Nice.
Right
There's
there.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
He likes pizza. Come on.
Yeah, so when I painted him, I thought it turned out really well. Like the little gut kind of just float in there, right, with the little ogre head.
Navel.
He has a give him a little navel. I went
cute
to give him a cute little navel. So that's my Gorger, and I had I used to do flesh eater courts. I have those guys all over the place. So that was something I did for my Geek Week, because I made my own kind of homebrew Gorger there. So that's going to be my Gorger. He's going to be part of my list for Adepticon. And also our tournament that we have this Saturday at Huzzah.
Yep, coming up.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the first time I've ever used green stuff on a model. And I said, I'm just going to give this guy a little gut. And I thought it turned out pretty well. So it makes it look a little bit less like an actual crypt horror, which is what I was going for.
Have you used green stuff to attach magnets to the bottom of your bases?
Oh, I just use super glue.
Super glue.
Super glue works perfect with magnets.
I was watching
with magnets.
Goobertown Hobbies, which is a great channel for a really kind of chill guy who paints minis, and that's his go-to is because he does so many of them, he doesn't want to keep track to see which magnets have like separated from the base of the model from super glue, so he just uses the green stuff because it's a little heavier dutier. a little
Oh, that's
heavier
interesting.
and dutier. But I recommend his channel. It's really good. And so you said green stuff, and that perked my curiosity about using it with rare earth magnets. But it's a beautiful
a lot of people
belly.
use that
It's
for
a beautiful
modeling.
gut. It's good stuff.
Yeah. But so that was my Geek Week.
Very
Back to you,
cool.
Justin.
Sorry, my camera's doing disco with the lights in my room. So my Geek Week started out with me reading a book. I wanted to start reading a science fiction book, and I was looking one up, and I thought I was clicking on a specific one, and then I ended up reading a book and realizing I'm like, wait, this wasn't written in the 1970s. I was looking for a Larry Niven book, and when I was doing like an Amazon thing, I thought it was I was like, oh, this looks cool. I was just looking at the cover. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, this is part of a series. Cool. I'm gonna like start reading it. Turns out it was not Larry Niven at all. It was this guy named James Rossone. But I was like 10% through the book before I realized there's no way that this was written in the 1970s, because he was talking about like in 2150 there was like on the moon there was the Elon Musk space station. Right? So I'm like, wait,
what?
How did he get this in 1970? You know, and they're talking like about the Blue Origin's low orbit Earth like mag rail, you know, and so it's this series that this guy writes. Now, I want you to name the first thing you guys think of when I describe some of the events that are happening in this book. There's miners that are mining ice in an asteroid belt, and they're attacked by a mysterious ship.
Ooh,
and they're trying to get away. Bingo. Just like The Expanse. So I'm like, what?
Or Ice Pirates.
I was thinking Ice Pirates. I was thinking Ice Pirates. That's where I was my go-to.
Yeah, but it was really feeling like The Expanse, like right off, you know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like seriously. And then they find life on this planet, so they go there, and they get to this planet, and they're trying to like set up a diplomatic mission, and they see that there's, you know, these humanoid people, and then there's these really tall 8-foot blue-skinned people with dark hair with braids and cat-like eyes. What does that sound like?
Avatar?
Tall Avatar. It sounds just like Avatar. I'm like, dude, this guy's ripping off like every like recent trope that this guy like that happened between like 2012 and 2020. This was written in 2020. I will say his story is original. These blue-skinned Avatar-like people have 4 arms, not 2. But their names were like T'Chak, just like in Avatar. Like they're like these like Indian style names. You know?
Are they like the aliens from Mars? From what's that old book series with the guy who went to John
Carter Mars?
John Carter, because those guys had 4 arms too. They were tall and had 4 arms.
Oh, I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot like that. And so
Yeah.
he's probably
And they were native,
like
native.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's totally like that. So he's probably like,
Indigenous or whatever.
I'm hanging my sorry guys, I just realized I didn't plug my PC in and it's about to die on me.
Ooh.
So I know.
Hurry!
That would be really bad. I know, I'm working on it.
T-minus 10, 9.
Pay no attention to the camera wobbling all over the place.
I know.
Viewers at home. Quick, throw up the Chiron that says, we'll be back in a minute. Technical difficulties.
Yeah. Grab a snack.
Oh, now he's frozen. Oh, no, you're unfrozen.
All right, so did I lose synchronicity?
No, we got
too?
you. We got you.
We're back.
Okay,
We're back.
We got
You're
you.
back.
Okay, so I'm reading this and I'm like,
so 4-armed
I don't know
avatars.
if I want to. Yeah, 4-armed avatars after you tried an Expanse thing, but he pivoted away from the Expanse. So I'm kind of like, how many little like Easter egg style references is this guy going to throw in there? Like, I don't know. Who knows? You know, so I don't know. I'll probably finish the book and then go back and read the Larry Niven book that I really wanted to read.
Which Larry Niven book were you trying to read?
I can't remember at this point. Which
Was
one
it
should
Why
I
don't you
read?
just read the
I think it was Ringworld. It was
novelization?
Ringworld.
You have to read Ringworld.
I haven't read it
If
yet.
you haven't
Jason.
read it, you have to read it.
Yeah,
Well, now I need to.
You have to read the
It's a
first
classic.
one.
Okay. So that was my first one. My second one, I randomly saw a YouTube short from this 1995 series called Sharp's Rifles. And this is what spawned the topic for today, because it's an amazing series about this non-commissioned officer. He was a sergeant that showed gallantry. He saved Lord Wellington's life during the Napoleonic Wars in Spain. And basically, it's this guy Sharp, who is Sean Bean, by the way. And I love me some Sean Bean. He is this leader of this ragtag band of riflemen in a musket world, right? So they're kind of like the special forces, and they're sent on these like cool little missions, but they're part of the larger Britannic army that is in Spain. I just need to play a little clip of this for you guys so that you can see the awesomeness of what I'm talking about. This was done in the 90s, remember? And I'm just going to play the opening song for you guys so that you hear this, because it's really something. All right, here we go. Window. Okay. Oh, I think I needed to do something else. Sorry, hold on.
Now we
not
can
that
see your
window.
YouTube history.
Share screen, share tab audio. Okay, all right. Yeah,
Sorority Sisters
whoops.
7. Oh, no, not that one.
Earth Girls.
Yes.
Are easy.
That's right.
Very
Jeff
disappointing movie
Goldblum.
on that front.
Oh, totally. They're actually not that
And
easy.
Jim
That's the
Carrey.
crazy part of it. Yeah,
and
and
Jim
Gina
Carrey
Davis.
and Damon Wayans. It's amazing.
Yeah,
That
so
cast
great.
is crazy good.
All right, here we go. Listen to this, because it's some epicness. Here's the intro to Sharp's Rifles. All right, that's enough.
It makes me want to have like perfect posture for some reason. I want to be like,
Nothing screams Napoleonic War like some metal guitar. You know? It's just like some electric guitar riffs in there, you know? So, I mean, super British, 90s, right?
Yeah, British music for TV shows, they have kind of a different aesthetic. They have a much more kind of, listen to all the Doctor Who's and some other similar shows, Blackadder and stuff like that. You'll hear kind of different tones that no one in America would ever use in a theme song. So they just have their own different way of doing it. It's okay. They have their own flavor.
Because like in the show itself, like something awesome will be happening, and like they'll just go into like straight like electric guitar riff, and you're just like, these guys are fighting with muskets. Like it just doesn't fit, but it's awesome. Anyway, my whole point was, as I started watching this, I got totally sucked in. I've like watched a bunch of, each episode is actually like a mini movie. They're like an hour and 41 minutes long. And they're kind of like the Sherlocks, like that were like really long with Benedict Cumberbatch. So they're like really long. They're super fun, and I may put together a whole RPG campaign just based on this show, because like each episode is a really cool adventure that you could do with your friends. So it sounds like a lot of fun. And again, it kind of inspired tonight's podcast, because it's all about like the military and Napoleonic War in Spain. So good times.
Is it the Sharps? Is it called the
Sharps? No,
just
so you can Sharp
with an E
and
in the end, like
Sharpie. But without an E.
Sharp.
And Sharp's Rifles is the first one. So it's pretty good. Good times. So
Now,
I'll probably
if one
refer to it a
wants
little
to
bit.
watch the show, Justin,
YouTube it's
is this
free on YouTube.
YouTube only? Free on YouTube. Okay.
Yep.
And
Free
it
on
has a
YouTube.
young Sean Bean.
Yeah,
Ooh,
very
he's
young
so
Sean Bean.
dashing.
This is post. This is post GoldenEye though.
Okay. Got it. Cool. It's exciting.
Interesting.
That's something new to watch.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Post
18
Ronin
episodes.
as well.
Yeah.
18 episodes. That's good. And they're long, you say.
They are long, but they're fun.
That's
They're a
great.
lot of blast. Yeah, a lot of blast. They're a
Cool.
blast to watch. A lot of fun. Anyway, that's my Geek Week.
So,
Dan,
looking at the
Yeah.
clock, you sure you want to do the news or you want to jump right into our main topic? It's your call.
Can you give us the
big
highlights
guy.
of the news?
Okay. Well, we can't do it without a little of this. Come on, play, man. You're not playing. Welcome to Tabletop and Beyond News. You know when you're using your volume control on your phone to do a fade out, you've reached a new level of low rent audio drops.
I like the ticker. We gotta put a stocks down there too.
That's right.
Because we do
Exactly.
the news section. But it's got to
Yeah,
be like
for our-
gamer like Paizo or like
Yeah. Right.
you know, yeah.
I never do the
Hasbro
Paizo
stock.
news.
Yeah,
There
Paizo,
was so
yeah,
much
good.
Paizo news that got left on the cutting room floor. I swear,
It always does with you,
it
Dan.
always does. I'm just like, I don't care about your Paizo stuff. Sorry. All right. Larian Studios announced the release date for Baldur's Gate 3 via a trailer during the PlayStation State of the Play event. And that day will be August 31st this year. And it will feature the voice talents of J.K. Simmons from Spider-Man and Invincible and other such great films. He will be the main antagonist. This will be a cross-platformer that'll all three platforms will be released at the same time. It'll go out on PC, Mac, and PS5, but not Xbox. There
What
have been
a
some technical
diss.
difficulties. So anyway, for those that don't know, Baldur's Gate has a long history of being one of those things that kind of kept D&D kind of in the zeitgeist for a little bit when people stopped playing it, because you could, if you didn't have an RPG group, you could just like go play Baldur's Gate and get a very D&D like experience with all the rules being very D20 oriented. So it was pretty much the same kind of rules engine from the earlier versions of D&D into the video game. So anyway, it's alive and well, and the third version, I know they've had dozens of titles, but this is like a major version instead of a minor addition to a title's additional campaign expansions.
I
Pretty
played
exciting.
Baldur's Gate 2 back in like 2002. And my friend and I would play co-op. And we'd play the heck out of it. And we'd get to the point where our wives were telling us, like, you guys need to, like, chill out. So we're like, all right, fine. And then he would go home, and then I would start a single-player campaign and accidentally save over our two-player game. Like, I did that, like, 3 times to the point where he said, I'm not playing this ever again with you.
I don't want to be your friend anymore, Justin,
Right?
because you don't care enough to save our game that we've invested so much into. Well,
Yeah.
in the realm of merch, moving on to our second news item, WizKids is expanding its offerings of life-size Dungeons & Dragons replicas. You can pre-order a Mimic. For those who don't know what a Mimic is a creature that looks like a chest of treasure that turns into a monster that wants to bite you. The figure is a 1-to-1 scale, and it's about 20 inches tall. They have some additional 1-to-1 scale items, such as the Quasit, the pseudo dragon, the Demolich, and the hand and eye of Vecna. So this will be their 4th addition to that line. So for those who need 1-to-1 scale D&D stuff in their life, they can get that. They can get a Mimic for the low price of $375.
Interesting.
They're practically giving that mimic away.
Practically. That's awesome. That's good.
But the sculpt looks really fun. I think it's a cool sculpt. So
that's like something you get if
interested,
you've got
go
a
check
game
it out.
shop. You know, like if you've
Yeah,
got a game store.
Okay, now let's say like if you have a game room where it looks like you've been accumulating dragon heads and other life-size paraphernalia, it would be a really nice fit for that. If you're trying to make everything look like, if all your accoutrements are not minis but actual life-scale stuff, that would be something you could put on a shelf in your game room.
What's the over/under on how many you think they'll sell?
Considering that a mimic is prominently featured in the trailer for the new D&D film, I think they're going to fill every order they get.
And how many is that?
One of those. I don't know what the market is for big chunky miniatures are, but it's enough for them to put out a $375 miniature. I mean,
Dan, I need a number.
I don't know, man. I bought a $200 Super Star Destroyer for Armada that I took to one tournament one time and played with. So
that has game value, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You could, in a D&D campaign, pick up this $375 foam plastic mimic and chuck it at a player across the table. That would have real value. Everybody would remember
Jason,
that session.
How many? That's true. How many do you think they sell of this? Over, under? Wild guess.
I think it's going to be sub 1,000, so in the 100.
Okay. All right. I was going to say 1,000. I think they'd sell 1,000.
I don't know, man. $375. I'm going to be honest. I don't particularly like the sculpt. It doesn't look like what I have always pictured a mimic to look like.
Hey,
but I'm also biased because of mimics of the Dark Souls franchise, which look very much more like treasure chests. This one, I think you can only tell it looks like a treasure chest if you look at it from the side or the back. From the front on, it just looks like the giant head of a purple monster.
I had that purple-headed monster.
Yeah. It's okay, though. I think that, like I said, some people like it. I think they're probably going to sell, I'm going to say 500 to 600. And I could totally be wrong, but that'll be my...
Okay. All right.
It's a lot of money, $375.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
people are stupid and want to. I mean, not stupid, but stupid with their money sometimes when they really like something. You know what I mean?
Well, everybody has different tastes, right? I mean,
I just think there's 1,000 people.
This is the 5th one they've made.
Yeah,
and the other one.
I think there's 1,000 people out there that will spend in the world that will buy this.
So that would mean they'd only make 37,000 gross. They'd probably make about 2 or 3 or 4,000 of these, and kind of break 6 figures.
Yeah, maybe. All right. So Dan, you did give me a number after all.
Well, it's
there. You go.
It's a
just
tough
had to give you the under
cause...
number. Then you went, no, that's too little.
I just don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, they're
I think they'll sell like 10.
Yeah.
Like 10.
They're shipping it to over 20 countries.
Yeah. Well, then at least 20.
Thing.
All right, 20. 20.
One in each country.
One. Just one.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Think of all the little game stores in all the world and all the D&D game rooms that need their own.
I'm telling you. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Maybe 3,000.
There you go.
All right.
All right. We've beaten this mimic to death.
Well, you need to usually when you encounter one.
Yeah.
That's
the news.
I've got one other thing. It's super fast. Look, convention season is upon us without even being upon us yet. What that means is Gen Con tickets are on sale. The events haven't gone up yet. That's usually in May where you buy tickets, but the tickets are on sale. Nova Open tickets went on sale this last week. And Adepticon is happening in like 3 weeks. And so look, if you are interested in attending a convention, like now's the time to be poking around for it. It's not going to be in 6 months because you'll probably be too late and not be able to get any of the things that you want to do or have fun with the things you want to have fun with, or even be with the people you want to be with. So now's the time to do it. Make sure that you are looking at big conventions. There's a lot of good stuff that's happening out there. So just keep your eyes open, and Google's your friend. So just wanted to throw that out there, Dan.
That's great. I mean, I'm now registered for 2 conventions, and I thought I was going to go to 0 this year. So, and
Nice.
neither of those 2 is Gen Con for some weird reason. So, what
Which
the what?
wait,
Well,
which
we know what.
convention are you going to other than Nova Open?
I'm going to KublaCon in San Francisco. Didn't you listen to
Yeah.
our last episode?
Yeah, KublaCon.
I'm sorry, guys. I
It's
missed some
okay.
of that.
You had the shingles, so it's cool.
It's
man.
also
I don't
not a
have the
weird
shingles.
reason
shibbles.
why. It's also not a weird reason why you're not going to Gen Con. It's because you're going on a cruise with your wife.
That's true.
Yeah, because we've been married for 2 decades, and she hasn't ditched me yet, which she has every right to.
Yeah,
It
fair
would
enough.
be a step up for her. So, but she ain't quitting the team. All right, that's the news. Let's kill the
Very
news and move
good.
on to our awesome topic.
Very good. I'm hiding my thing and I'm showing another thing. Here we go. Main topic. Very good. All right, so we wanted to talk about tonight with you. Wow, we're 46 minutes in already, which is good because I don't know that we've got I don't know that we've got a ton
Yeah.
of it's not like we got an hour's worth on this
Yeah.
this topic, so it's okay.
Maybe like 10 more minutes.
Maybe like 44 more minutes, Jason. Jeez, this guy.
They come
Okay,
for the content, Jason. They come for the content.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so how to run a military style campaign. So I'm going to throw this question out here. What is the difference between like a military style campaign and your average run of the mill RPG campaign that you may play in? What's the difference?
Group composition, which is why people are together in the first place. So
Okay.
usually there's a D&D party, everybody meets in a tavern. There's basically you come up with a contrivance why this group has formed that's usually kind of thin, like, oh, we're all a smugglers group or whatever it is. A military campaign, it's explicit. It's part of the rigor and structure of the game is to say you all are in this organization and this is the role you have, bang. And it's very clear and not, oh, well, this is my cousin and and we're going off adventuring.
Yeah, like one or what was it? 1A and 1B. Remember those guys from our
right,
campaign that we had at Gen Con?
Yeah, it's a deep cut. You're
They're
just
twin
making up
brothers.
stuff all day long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah,
you
so
get
you're
into military campaign because you want to play in a military campaign. Make sure you have a conversation with your players that you say, okay, well, it's not just the choices you make; it's orders, it's your code of ethics, your code of conduct. There's other kind of structural barriers that will shape your role playing decisions during the game, and you got to sign up for it, and you got to sign up for the consequences of what happens when you buck those rules.
Yes, I want to put a pin in that and come back to it because I think that is a huge part of this. But Jason, what do you think is the difference between like a military style campaign and a just a run of the mill role play game? And a follow on question after you answer that: do you consider the Aliens RPG to be a military style campaign? Discuss. That's a follow on question. Don't think about that one too hard yet.
Okay. So first question, because that one, my mind went reeling. I think it's a skin.
Okay.
Because whether it's a military campaign, whether it's you all work for a corporation, whether you all have been enlisted by the government to do investigations, whether you work for the same police detective, office, I think all role-playing games have an underlying thing that ties the players together towards a common objective. I don't necessarily think that the hierarchy in the we'll say the rank system presents anything differentiating than normal role playing with parties. What I think does maybe do it is the plots and the sense of the story, as you're usually serving. I don't know. Now that I think about it, I mean, I feel like it's just another skin on the same concept that there's some overarching driving force that's brought your team together to go after an objective that's usually driven by a higher level strategy.
Do you think that so I agree. I think that it can be both what both of you guys said, because I don't think that both of you are talking about the same kind of campaign. I don't. I think that you guys are talking about two different kinds of campaigns. And one is just a skin that just kind of provides you sort of that fig leaf and like, this is what we're doing, and kind of a backdrop to it. But I think that there is a way to run a military campaign that Dan's talking about that really leans in heavy and really begins to incorporate like those military structures, the idea of orders, the idea of like, we abide by the Geneva Convention type of thing, and what happens when you don't,
Yeah, but
and
you have that with the Starship crew that has a captain and a first officer and an engineer that's not
is
military
that a
based.
military campaign?
So
I would say no.
how
Okay.
it depends on how you structure it. Okay, so every
Yeah.
time you give one player a decision space to make an authoritative decision that affects the lives of all the other players, and that's structured in a rank system, you're smack dab in the middle of a military campaign. I just did Klingons. I've done Star Trek in the past, and somebody has to be the damn captain unless you've structured the campaign differently. Then you're on a starship, right?
Okay,
So
I get it.
everybody can come to it with their different skill sets, and that's great. But you need to be wildly acutely aware if you're game mastering this, or you're setting it up, or you're the one who wants to get the players together. You got a group of people that can't play in that kind of a milieu where if somebody's going to give an order, you got to live with it. Now, there's a counter. You can still be in a military campaign and have everybody be on equal footing. And that's where everybody has the same rank. Maybe everybody's a buck private. Maybe everybody's a new recruit. Maybe you're all graduating the academy together. Maybe you're all going through basic training together and you're bonding over basic training before you're deployed. Those can be awesome ways to do a military campaign that you're not stepping on each other's toes about, are we going to fight or flight? That's a basic question about any conflict. Do we defend or attack? And sometimes you can have the authority figure, you can have the sergeant or the captain or whatever, or the captain of the ship be a non-player character. And that is one model to do it. You just have to know your players and know what they're in the mood for. If you have players that want to I want to rank up and maybe be this someday. Maybe I want my own thing. Maybe I want to build my own military career. If you're in a long-term campaign, you have to be aware of that. Sometimes in a military campaign, and you're on a boat, and everybody's coming up with different ideas of what to do next, and they get into analysis paralysis as the GM, you point to the captain and say, "You're the captain of the ship. You tell me the exact thing you're going to do next. What are your orders?" And man, I've seen some players' eyes get real big, like, "Oh, they're going to do the thing I was just telling them not to do." So it takes. It can be fun, but a player-to-player conflict, you have to have you have to be aware of it. You got to manage it a little differently than you would. Oh, we're a bunch of treasures looking for gold and murder hoboing our way through a fantasy realm.
Yeah. So,
sorry, that's my
Jason,
long speech on that.
So you were about to agree with Dan.
I was about to agree on the premise. I think
okay.
I think I'm getting hung up on semantics. I think because everything Dan described doesn't have to be in specifically a military setting. Everything Dan described can be in a corporation authoritative rank.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
I think what we're really talking about is I think what we're getting at is it's some sort of a relationship between the players that's a rank hierarchy. Right? Because it doesn't. When I think military, I think you're in a war scenario. That's
Okay.
what I think of when I think military. But you
Mm-hmm.
can be in a authoritative ranked scenario,
Sure.
completely not in a war campaign,
Okay.
but still have rank hierarchy with the decision tree and the
So yeah.
consequences of following or not following it.
So what I'm hearing is one, to have a military campaign, you do need a rank hierarchy, but that is not what exclusively makes a military campaign, right? So you have to have that,
Fair.
but it's
Yep.
not the
It's
sole
not what makes it, but it
component.
is a
Right.
pretty common. Those peas
I
and
think it's
Yeah.
got
carrots
to
go
be there.
together pretty
It has
well
to be there.
I think
I
it's
think
got
it
to
has
be
to
in
be
there.
there.
some
You have to
way.
have that rank hierarchy.
Unless you're doing like
Two,
a Force 9 from Navarro type thing, which is the
mhm,
Star Wars approach, or a Dirty Dozen.
yeah,
Okay, sorry, I've
yeah,
said my
sure.
piece. Keep going. Number 2.
Sure, sure. All right, number two, Jason, I think you touched on this, right? Like for a military campaign, I think you need a war scenario. I don't think you could have sort of a peacetime military campaign. Like that's pretty boring, bro. You're gonna go deliver supplies to like hungry, needy people, right?
We're gonna
Because
run
that's what you're
drills.
doing,
We're gonna run
right?
drills again. We're
I mean,
gonna
Yeah.
it
play a
can.
game
You
about
can.
war gaming.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, right.
We're going to plan the
You
plan.
can, but you can start out as a peacetime
Sure.
warrior group and transition into conflict, right? Because it's like, what's happening? Oh my gosh, we're being attacked. Like, we got to do something. But I think you said something key there too, right, Jason? Is that you have to have like a war scenario. How does that play out in like an RPG thing? Because, in my opinion, if you are going to war game, you should just war game, right? Like if you're gonna play big battles, go get your models out and roll a bunch of dice. Like it doesn't like as an RPG, how do you deal with like in a campaign, how do you deal with this war that's going on? Like what do you guys think? How do you adjudicate that sort of?
You have to enjoy war stories that are different than battle stories.
Okay.
Okay. So there's a lot. I mean, the beauty of this is that there's a gazillion movies on the subject. I mean, look at Saving Private Ryan. So the war becomes a backdrop. It makes it very clear who the kind of the obvious bad guys are. But even in Saving Private Ryan, they take a twist on that and say, well, what if you don't shoot the prisoner and what happens and stuff like that. So, but anyway, what kind of war stories do you want to tell that are different than the battle itself? And a role playing game situation usually fits really well with 4 or 5 individuals. So you're usually in a squad or a special forces unit, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to look at the stories where that excels. What war movies are your favorites? And that includes aliens. That includes sci-fi stuff. What's the universe you want to go play in, and what does your group want to go play in, and what is the game master inspired by? You were inspired by the Napoleonic War, right?
Yeah.
The Sharps
Just
rifles
recently, right?
thing. Just recently. Okay, so you think through the idea. Look, they had 18 episodes. They must have had 18 really interesting stories set up against a battle backdrop. And maybe you spend the whole time, cowering, or running on the run because your force has just been overpowered and you're trying to keep your unit alive.
Yeah.
Or there's just lots of different ways to go, but make the war be the backdrop of the story. I mean, between 1935 and 1965, Hollywood produced dozens and dozens and dozens of war movies. So, go find the one that interests you the most and check it out. Maybe adapt it to your genre. I mean, it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what do you think, Jason? What is the role of war and battle play in the military campaign?
Same concept that Dan said. It depends on what you want to do. I'll give you a couple examples. I think the easiest go-to in a military campaign is to have the players be a squad of special forces of some form, right? So you asked the question earlier, is the Aliens RPG a military style RPG? I would say the question really is, what campaign are you running? Is Aliens have a setting that makes it easy to run a military campaign? And I think the answer is yes, because it has much of the the setting revolves around a conflict that's going on with the UAC and the UPP. And your players, there's a whole campaign book, the Colonial Marines, right? So you can build a campaign setting completely around that, where you are maybe a squad of Marines that have been given an assignment and you're going out there and you're playing. Another thing that you can do though with aliens is you can do kind of like a space truckers approach, where you're not a colonial marine. So it just depends on how you want to run the scenario, how you want to run the campaign. Years ago we played Rogue Trader, the Warhammer, right? And that evolved into a strong military campaign, because we got into a situation where we were on a planet that we knew had an imminent invasion by orcs. And one of our members, not all of us, but one of our members was an officer or had rank. I think it was you, Dan, that had rank. And it turned into
went badly.
Yeah. Well, but it turned into while we were a unit of 4 or 5 folks, it turned into more of a strategic battle, because we were controlling large scale fleets and sending fleets off to protect certain fronts in space. And then it migrated down to planet side, and then we were protecting certain fronts to the station or the ground base that we were protecting. So in that case, it was more of a larger scale kind of strategy campaign. And then the role playing dealt with, the coup style things that happen inside of the ranks in wartime, when people have different opinions and are trying to exercise different things. So I think, to answer your question, it's like all role playing, man. Role playing is the beauty behind a role playing game is you have a total freedom in how you architect the campaign, and even where the campaign goes. It can start off as a non-military and it could turn into a military, or vice versa.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
I want to point our listeners to the 2019 movie Midway, which I think does this really, really well. It's the story of the Battle of the Midway, but it starts out in the middle. Well, it starts out in Pearl Harbor. So you're introduced to your characters, and the backdrop is the Pearl Harbor attack. So what are your characters doing during the Pearl Harbor attack? Who lives and who dies, and what do the characters learn, and how do they grow from that? And then by the time they get to the final Battle of Midway, the main characters are doing leverage point things where if they don't do exactly what they need to do, exactly when they need to do it, the whole hinge of the battle is going to swing on what that one bomber did. The main character his name was Dick Best, and it's not a joke. That was his name in real life, was Dick Best, and he has the highest number of kills of aircraft carriers of any airman ever. So he's destroyed more aircraft carriers than anybody, and he took out 2 of them in one day. So you can come up with a story. So they took the Battle of Midway, which was this huge battle where it turned the tide of the war in the Pacific, but it really became about this guy Best, and as an airman, and what he was able to do and accomplish, and that could be a fun way to tell these stories. And that puts your characters in the middle of it. And he couldn't do it by himself. He had co-pilots, and he had other people, and he had senior officers and stuff that made all that possible. It wasn't a superhero show. So
could you imagine having a name like that in middle school? Like, there's no way they could make fun of you.
Nope.
With your name. Go ahead, try to make fun of me with my name. What does it say?
The term Dick as being an off-color phrase is a relatively newer thing. It wasn't like that, 20, 30 years ago. So.
First name or last name, comma first. Oh, well.
Boom.
That was not the first thing people thought of. I had this exact same conversation with my 10-year-old son.
I'm sure it's not.
We drove to Dick's Sporting Goods to get him hockey gear. He's like, Dad, look at what they named the store. And he's 10. And I'm like, it didn't always mean what you think it means, okay? Let's not do that.
Stands for Richard.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, look, I think so. It's interesting because, Dan, your point stands, right? Any war movie, any war show that you go watch that Hollywood has ever made is really trying to tell the story of what happened at these different places, right? Like you look at a bridge too far, or the bridge of Remagen, or even if you pick up like Band of Brothers or the Pacific, right? Those stories that or those HBO series that were like 10 episodes each. Each episode had a theme that they were trying to get across and was telling the story of the people that happened to be in the battle, right? And yes, there were
Yeah.
war scenes that were very visual and cinematic and things like that. So I think that that's key, right? Like the war needs to be in the background, and we have talked about this with other um other RPGs of like you need to have your big bad in the background. Well, the big bad is the war, right? And you have the
Mm-hmm.
other side, which is the big enemy. And so, you're usually going to be doing something against that enemy or for the good guys or against the bad guys. All right. Like that's kind of how it plays out a little bit. So the war is the backdrop. The question that I have is that, and this is going to be the natural question of like, how do you handle battle scenes in your campaign? Because we like Jason said, we had Rogue Trader and there was battle scenes. It was a lot of spreadsheet work. It was a lot of like
Yeah.
bookkeeping that just like really kind of took, like, for me as the DM, like it really took me out of it. And I'm like, this feels just like I'm playing Risk with myself on a spreadsheet, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
You
You
lose
know,
the
All the
storytelling.
fun of 5-column
Yeah.
accounting.
Yeah,
right.
you
So
lose the
Jason,
storytelling aspect of it.
yeah, so how do you put that story into a big battle? Because really, inevitably, any military campaign is going to need to have a battle at some point or another. So how do you put that
Yeah.
storytelling into the battle?
Yeah. I
have
think
two
Dan
thoughts.
has done. I think Dan has done a good job about this when
Thank
we
you.
played Star Wars campaigns, where there is an overarching larger war or conflict, but the
Hmm.
players get put in a very critical path of a decision that will turn the tide of that war. So
Okay.
it's, whether it's a key thing like you get the plans to the Death Star, right, or something like that. It's something that will turn the tide of the war, whether or not your players, what the actions they have. But it doesn't have to be they're commanding the fleets. It can just be,
Hmm.
because wars can be won by very small divisive things, right, that
Hmm.
cause a different disruption to one side or the other. The fronts that are being fought are almost just trying to maintain a status quo while you look for those little disruptors that
Hmm.
allow one side to turn over the other. So let your players be involved in that little disruptor. That's key. And Dan's done a really good job with that
Yeah.
as
Thank
we
you.
played Star Wars in the past. Yeah.
There's some role playing game systems have systems built in to do large scale wars, and
Hmm.
so do whatever that they have. If you're in a system that's doing it, then you don't have to homebrew anything. Like fortunately, Star Wars does have a mass combat system. It's not in the core book. You have to go find it in the expansions, but it's there, and it's in two places. You can put your hands on it. But what you can do, so that's one way to do it, is if they publish something, just do whatever they published. If they have not published something, you can characterize both armies as characters or two groups of a small number of characters.
Hmm.
And you figure out what are their advantages, strengths, and weaknesses. And you figure out what your players are doing to help your side and what are the bad guys doing to help their side. And then you have two NPCs slug it out. And then you figure out a way to say, okay, well, it looks like you guys got totally decimated, and in warfare that means you've lost X number percentage of the main troops, and so you can paint the story based on dice rolls that are based on maybe a very lightweight aggregation. It can be as simple as every single large unit gets a D10, every medium unit gets a D8, and every small unit gets a D6, and you pick up two sides of dice and you drop them, and you say, okay, my players, I'm going to put them in as a D20 on the good guy side, add up the numbers, and come up with who won. You can do that.
Hmm.
If the story is going to affect how big or how small or how powerful one army is going to be against the other one, and that's the fun part. That's where your players are going to be that hinge point on the side of history. Where do they move it? Is it the plans to the
Yeah.
Death Star? Are they going to undermine 5 units so they can't show up to battle? or something along those lines, right? Or are they going to bring in 5 units on your side and tip the scales? And that I would recommend you guys look at doing that and don't overcomplicate it. Don't do what Justin did on the spreadsheet.
That's right. And I
Because
was
he's
doing
just
what
said,
the system told me, right? I was doing what the system told me, and
yeah.
it just was not. It wasn't very
If it's
good.
not fun, don't do it. If it's not fun,
Yeah.
don't do it. It's the spreadsheet is just a big a big aggregation of numbers anyway. So why don't you just dumb it down and Fisher Price it down to the core essentials?
Well, and what
So
I
those
like
are my
is that. Yeah, thank you, Dan. What I like is that idea of like being able to roll dice or whatever, and you have a dice pool, and then what you can do is say like, okay, at this point in the battle, like I have a moment where my players can go do X, Y, and Z. And depending on how well they perform that task, like maybe it's like, hey, I need you to go take out that observation post or that machine gun nest. Like that is one task that they can go do, and they can face off against other NPCs or something like that. But because they took out that machine gun nest, or maybe, now you can affect that big dice pool that you're talking about. Now you can maybe add some dice in favor of the good guys because there's less dudes getting killed now, so more people can storm the beach or whatever it is. You know what I mean? You can kind of tell that narrative story. But maybe the bad guys, they rolled something to where like, oh, you thought you killed them, but really another dude popped up and started shooting away again. And it kind of tipped the dice back and forth. So you find those hinge points that Jason you're talking about, and those can affect the kind of the overall dice math that you're talking about, Dan. I think that really makes for a compelling battle session that you can have with your players. I'm going to spoil one of the Sharp episodes, right, from the Napoleonic War. So he wanted to capture a golden eagle is what they called it, and basically it was just like the Britain's colors, the flag. They had these Napoleonic eagles that were like bronze or gold or something like that, and Napoleon himself had touched them. So it's like you could never let it touch the ground. You could never do that. And so Sharp said, I'm going to go get one of those, because if they captured it in the middle of the battle, it was super demoralizing. And like the French troops would run, right? And so that was like their personal mission. They asked to be put on a certain line or part of the line, and they would go after it and try to do that. Like, what a great little point that we're talking about, right? The battle is happening, and your group is like, we need to go capture that one thing because it's going to cause the enemy to have like a ton of, be completely demoralized. And cause like a lot of people to flee, which will give us the upper hand in the battle, right? So like put those little missions in there for your players to do something. And again, I think that fits with the idea that they're special forces or maybe a crack unit or something where they're needed. And if they can do that, that's those hinge points, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and think about the consequences, and they need to feel the consequences of their actions, right? So if they screw up, let them screw up and let the consequences really hurt. Like let it really hurt. So instead of everybody kissing you as a liberator and everybody having a ticker tape parade when you roll into town, the villagers are running. There's looting. People are running scared, and their lives are in danger, right? The players' lives are in danger. Or where are the battle lines moving because of the players' actions? Are you pushing out or pulling back? And increase the level of tension based on failure or poor decision making. What I recommend not doing is writing the history of this war and then putting the players on a train, and they're just passengers along the train of what's happening. You can do that. That's perfectly acceptable if you're big into reenacting. If you're a real history buff and you want to take somebody through the Civil War or World War II, that's okay. That's okay too. That can have its own fun. But it can also be really scary if you're like, being deployed to Iwo Jima or, Tarawa or something like that. You're like, oh no, this does not end good. This does not end good, or Monte Cassino, I think in Italy, where we just got waxed really hard. So, then your players are in Wikipedia to see how bad the situation is, and figure out how do we get out of this one alive. So, but that could be fun too. That can have its own charm if that's what your players want to do. If you got 3 or 4 history buffs going, hey, I want to do the Civil War, let's do it. Or they may want to do an alternate history, and that can be fun too.
Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of when you prepare a session where you have a big battle in it, that you are planning for the good and the bad, right? So, if for example, your mission was to go capture one of these golden eagles, and they come back with the golden eagle, hey, some good things happened, and that opens up certain doors for things to happen, right? What if they don't come back with it? What if the French ended up beating them back because they took too many losses? Now what? Now what are they going to do? Make those consequences feel real as well. Like their superior commanders are going to be livid that they took the risk of trying to capture this eagle in the middle of a battle when they were asked to hold the line. Okay, and now what do they need to do? Maybe they get sent to have to go do something else now and make good out of a bad situation or something, so
right. And you have to know where if your players are playing on offense or defense. And we talked about covert ops and going behind the lines. Mm-hmm. If you're on defense and you're in Pearl Harbor, you're going to get just hit by a tsunami of aircraft and stuff like that. And you're going to be like, okay, our plan is survival and mitigating damage. If you're on offense, you're like, okay, we're putting together a plan. Are we going to meet our strategic objectives? And what is our team's goal within the larger broad? What's our tactical task that we have to do along the big strategy? Mm. And how do we help the strategy with our tactical actions?
I would say just always remember that we play these games to see how the story plans out, not to just tell the story that's already written, right? Yeah. So the conflicts are there, the threats are there to give ourselves a starting point and a backdrop. The real fun comes in where you find out the story tells itself as you play the game.
Yeah.
And then everybody can experience this new story. Like when we finished our Aliens setting, right? I think more than one of you said, hey, this would have been a really awesome movie.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it's like, it was only loosely based off of what was in the box set. I mean, because you guys, it's not like Dan said, it's not on rails. If you want to play it on rails, maybe play something other than an RPG. But an RPG is about getting into a scenario with people and then having a story evolve as we live our lives inside of this RPG. That's what makes RPGs great to me.
Yeah, 100%. It's really that canon problem you have with most genres. It's like, are we going to do the canon of what George and what Gene Roddenberry told us we were supposed to do, or Steven Spielberg, or whatever the history book said, or are we in an alt-U where anything can happen? I definitely flavor to taste. Figure out what your players like the best, and they'll tell you real fast if you just ask them.
Do you guys think that it is easier to railroad your players in a military campaign than a run-of-the-mill RPG campaign? Or is it about the same? Is it different? Like, I mean, what do you think?
If you're trying to affect the outcome of the war, then I'll say it might be easier to fall into a trap of a railroad.
Okay.
As a GM. But I think that's completely on the GM, right? I think it's a trap for GMs to watch for.
Yeah, if you've strung together a logical sequence that has to happen, if every domino has to hit a certain way, that domino is not a set of dominoes. You've just built railroad tracks, right? And if the players start diverging from your dominoes and your story and they're getting off your tracks, then you buckle up and roll with them and have it be a collaborative adventure, not a my way or the highway adventure.
Yeah, and move the cheese, man.
I agree.
Move the cheese
completely. And you've got to surprise. You got to surprise them. Yeah, you gotta have surprises in there,
Yeah.
like any other RPG. Sorry, go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
No, you hit it, man. And, surprise them, but also as a GM member, you're a player, right? So allow yourself to be surprised, right? I mean, half the time that we play RPGs, I've got a couple, well, I'll simplify it big time. Like, you're looking for the key in Legend of Zelda in the dungeon somewhere, right? And when you play an arcade game with that, like you got to find that one place where that key is, or you're not progressing, right?
Mm-hmm.
In RPG, it's as the story unfolds. If you guys hang out, I've said this before. If you guys hang out in one area and you have some really awesome role play, I'm going to pick the key up and I'm going to put it over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, hey, you guys told the story a little differently than I thought, and that's awesome. Let's roll with it.
Yeah.
We needed
And
that
it's
so
because
bad.
it's about having fun, right? And it's about feeling like you're telling a story and you're progressing in that story. It's not about spending, an hour and a half inside a casino just to find out it's a dead end, right?
What, Jason?
We
What?
had we had we had a Star Wars
You had
West
a good
Marches
time.
No, it was great.
We had a Star Wars West Marches mission, and a couple hours early because the players, we came up with our plan, and it wasn't what the GM thought we should be doing, and it just kind of fizzled on itself, and everybody said, "Do over, let's all go home." So
Ha,
we spent the rest of the session like buffing out our gear. Going, what do you need to buy? What do you need to buy? Okay, let's modify the gear this way. So we got something out
nice.
of it. It just wasn't what we all expected. But yeah, got to move the key to where move
Yeah.
the key, help the players feel like they're accomplishing something. It's way better than railroading them into saying, "Well, you didn't play my mission the way I thought I envisioned you. I thought you would be." So
So
there's a lot of improv in this game.
yeah, totally. The last question that I have for you guys is: do you think that there are RPG systems that are better than others to facilitate a military campaign, or are they all the same? It just depends on how you work it as a GM.
There are better systems for it. There are systems that explain what free resources you would be getting based on your role in the military unit, and everybody may have different roles, and they would get different access to gear, access to the universe. The story would, a quartermaster and a buck private are not the same person, but they're in the same barracks eating the same food.
Mm-hmm.
They have different jobs and they have access to different adventures, different leverage points. So definitely a system that accounts for that stuff is going to be a more playable in the long term. If you're doing maybe a limited campaign, a 3-episode arc or a 6-episode arc, that may not be exactly what you need. Any system that accommodates for like a lot of if-thens, like in a military structure, Star Trek's really good at this. You know who's in charge, who's going to be doing what, who gets up and another person sits down in a seat, what happens when a player keels over and you need somebody else to take control of the ship. All that stuff is kind of ironed out. And there's game mechanics for all that. So the new Star Trek system right now, Star Trek Adventures, has a system in which you pull in a non-player character at a specific time that has a specific skill set to help you solve a problem. You're like, oh crap, we need somebody to come to the bridge who knows how to do comms because our comms person is down on the planet and dead. It's all baked and it's all done, and you can do it quickly. And you don't have to come up with, the GM doesn't have to make up as much stuff on the fly. Mm-hmm. So keep an eye out for stuff that has a good fit. They're less common than murder hobo systems, quite frankly.
So if you were to name one or two systems, what would you say, Dan? That come to mind right away.
That do that very well.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what I run. What I've run is Star Trek. I've ran it Klingon style, which is just kind of the grittier version of Starfleet, quite frankly. So it's not that it's the same system. There is, Age of Rebellion under Star Wars has very clear roles for players when they join the unit of what their job is going to be. And on your character sheet, you have a duty component. I'm sorry, I use the word duty, but you have a duty, and everybody has a different duty. And when you're doing your duty, good things happen. And as you progress, you can expand your role in the military that will grant you access to more resources to make the game more fun. So if you get a certain amount of notoriety you get access to better ships and fighter support, what you need to do bigger stories. So I like that a lot. It makes it easier. I don't have to come up with the rules. It's rules as written. You just point out to the chapter, and you're not just ruling by fiat. So those are two that come to the top of my head. And Dune is probably very good for that. I have Dune as well. Haven't played it as much, but it's very clear what everybody should be doing. It's also hierarchical, and there's a lot of not just physical warfare with sci-fi battles, but there's also social combat, which is fun too.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Jason? If you were to name a couple off the top of your head, does any come to mind for you?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to clarify, when you say system, are you talking about system mechanics or setting that is better for military?
An RPG system mechanics. Well, maybe setting. I don't know.
Something you buy, something you buy off the shelf that gets you ready to go.
Yeah. Because I think those are two separate things, right? Like 5e, there are adaptations in the fantasy side, and the science fiction side, and the modern D20 side. Mm-hmm. But the 5e mechanics is under the hood, right? You have attributes, you have skills, how you level those skills, how you use them with the attributes. Mm-hmm. That's the mechanics. Yeah. The setting that most people are familiar with is the Dungeons and Dragons 5e.
Right, sure.
Right. I would say most of the time, a fantasy setting is less amenable to a military campaign.
Okay.
And that the science fiction system/settings are more geared towards enabling a military campaign. Just because I feel like in the science fiction world, you seem to get a lot more of modern technology and evolution of governments and societies that have built over, generations and centuries and aeons to produce something that typically has provided a very structured hierarchy in there. Whereas in fantasy, while you do have kingdoms and those kinds of things, I feel like it's really just mainly been built around the individual adventurer, or the small adventure. So I would say 5e. I'm sure you could make it work, but if you're going to go buy D&D 5e stuff off the shelf, it's most likely going to not. You're going to have to do some investment in time to make that fall into a military setting. But if you go buy, even Aliens is an easy one if you wanted to drop in, because it's built around, Colonial Marines. It's built around you're in the military. There, I think things like Android would fall into corporations and that hierarchy debate we talked about at the beginning. So you could still have that hierarchical structure, but and you have the underlying war between the corporations. Right. So maybe it's not as much as like a war between militaries, but you still have that same feel that I think is supported in there. So I would say go for a science fiction one if you really want to try to dive into some sort of a military campaign.
And I'm curious to see if Conan the Barbarian would have fantasy plus warfare. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with it because I know Conan was sometimes the king, and sometimes there were army battles that took place.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there as a maybe.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Fantasy's tough.
Yeah, I think in general fantasy's tough. However. I think that there are some fantasy systems out there that are very much adapted to this. Zweihander is very much adapted to a military-style campaign if you want to. And with it, Blackbirds, which is kind of a different world within the Zweihander system, right? Totally geared for warfare, like a military-style campaign where you are kind of the special people that have been kind of co-opted by governments to by the kingdoms to go out and fight some battles, right? So I think that system and that rule set definitely can lead towards that
When
but
are we
it's about how
playing
you set it up.
Blackbirds, Justin? Justin,
I
when are we playing?
know.
You got the big book, and sorry, I'm just shaming.
Well, he got over
Yeah.
his sniggles, so we can.
Oh yeah, the
play.
sniggles.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that there are some fantasy ones out there. I would not, for example, say Shadow of the Demon Lord. I feel like that's just dark D&D.
Yeah.
In a sense, right, with a different rule set, with a very unique rule set, and I think that that's very good. Blades in the Dark is not normally adapted to a military style campaign. I have not read this yet or played this, so full disclosure there. But there is a supplement that's called Band of Blades, that is Blades in the Dark RPG system that is meant specifically for military campaigns that you can play. So if you like the Blades in the Dark system, like that's an easy one. You can pick up that supplement for not too much money on Drive Through RPG, and all of a sudden you could be playing an easy campaign in, for example, the setting of Game of Thrones, right? Because it's a low fantasy style world. You could be playing that in medieval England or France or something like that, where you could adapt that very easily, and it's a very much oriented towards pure military campaign. So that's a good resource if you're interested in that, and maybe that's one that you could look at and see how they do things mechanically, and then adapt that to whatever RPG your party is comfortable doing. So leverage the ideas that are there, and maybe you don't use the dice roll mechanics, but maybe you take the same ideas that they have and adapt it to your campaign. So anyway, yeah, well, Jason, we went 45 minutes on this topic. more than you thought we would. So I think it was a great topic. I like the idea of military campaigns, and I think you guys had some great ideas on how to effectively run it, because I can personally attest that I don't know that I effectively ran one before, and I felt it, right? I felt it, that it just didn't work out, and I was running it rules as written because I didn't really know how to try to incorporate it a little bit better, given what it was telling me. But I'm after having thought about this a lot more, I see that there's a lot of opportunities to do a really fun military campaign, especially if that's what your players are kind of clamoring for, right? So yeah. Let us know if you listen to the show or watch it on YouTube. Let us know what you guys think. Like, do you have any ideas on what we could be doing to improve our military campaigns and RPGs? Have you run one before that you thought was effective? What rule sets have you used that were good? So we'd love to hear from you. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for listening to the show or watching it on YouTube. We greatly appreciate all of the support that you guys give us, and thank our Patreons out there for helping us out. We very much appreciate them as well. And in the meantime, keep the dice rolling and have a great night.
See ya.
Take care.